Hello everyone. It is going to be a great evening, starting with the first GDSC event as a Flutter facilitator of 2023. I am Sugheeshan, the Flutter facilitator of GDSC SKCT. So, I'm really happy for the various leads of the GDSC SKCT community who made this session possible. So, this session is going to be started with the introduction to Flutter Basics. In this session, we are also going to look about Dart programming language. So this is going to be the agenda of the today's session. So the first topic is about what is Flutter, and second topic is about why Flutter, and third is about Dart and its benefits, and the fourth is going to be about the installation in Windows OS. So the Flutter is the first UI platform that is designed for an ambient computing world. It is said by Tim Smith, who is an developer who is being recognized by various individual communities and various peoples of the community. So I have been hearing about the amazing about how amazing Flutter is, and I have decided to try it out to learn something new. I wish to have more topics to discuss with the colleagues. It started by watching, then reading, and then I started coding. It was a good experience. Apps were running, and everything that was written wasn't hard to understand. However, the process wasn't smooth enough. Some of the details were not explained in that resources. Also, since everything was new to me, the platform itself, obviously, programming language and the approaches, and even mobile app development, the lack of those details was really painful. So anytime something didn't work, I didn't know what to Google. Dart, Flutter, window, screen, root, widget. It was very difficult for me to understand the flow of Flutter. So, but now it's changed. Now the development of Flutter is so drastic and open to everyone that it is widely spread with a community of people who share the same wavelength of enthusiasm towards Flutter and mobile app development. So, what is Flutter? Flutter is an open source framework by Google for building beautiful, natively compiled multi platform applications from a single code base. So, the first version of Flutter was known as Sky and ran on the Android operating system. It was unveiled at the year 2015 in the Dart Developer Summit. Initially, it was not planned to be Flutter. Initially, it was like Sky, and it is so obvious that only the language was initially planned and not the framework. So, the Flutter framework is complete open source and it is compatible for various UIs in cross platform application with a single code base as the content suggests. So what it tells is that individual applications facilities in iOS, Android, Linux, Windows, and even web, and also Windows applications are applicable only with the help of Flutter in a single code base in a single Dart language. So on May 6, 2020, the Dart Software Development Kit (SDK). Just wait for 2 minutes. Sorry for the inconvenience. The full screen view wasn't compatible in this software, so there was a slight issue in it. So we continued the same view. So coming up again. On May 6, 2020, the Dot Software Development Kit SDK version 2.8 and Flutter 1.17.0 were released, adding support for the Metal API, which improves the performance of an iOS device by approximately 50%, as well as new material widgets and network tracking development tools, which increased the iOS functionality of the Flutter application. So, why Flutter? Flutter is a cross-platform language in which the soft cross-platform language. Initially, people doesn't have the knowledge of what is cross-platform. A cross-platform language is a language which can run in various different operating systems. A software is said to be a cross-platform when a product wants to be seen through various individual operating systems and perform the same ability and task of the functionality of the application, so that the product's comfortability is not withdrawn. So, Flutter application has the support of desktop, mobile, web platforms is stuff is available. But in other native languages, in other various languages like C++, Swift, Kotlin, Java, and C, it is not possible, and it is a hectic process to develop individual design for each platforms. So in Mac OS, we have to use it with Shift, in Linux with C, and in Windows with C++. For mobile, people use the native language of Kotlin, Java, and XML. In iOS with Shift. In website, the product needs to be accessible. So people use HTML, CSS, JavaScript, or use any front-end JavaScript framework like Angular, React, or Vue. Making application for various desktop and mobile operating systems require various different SDKs and skill sets, and in various people with developing skills of each individual operating systems. So it took, in the past, you would have needed to hire developers who are proficient at each platform to implement your app on each of these platforms. So that many developers are required, many people with various different knowledges are required, various bugs should be faced in individual platforms. So to avoid that, the Flutter was implemented in such a way that it is cross-platform. So it is also expensive. To add a feature, you have to update the code across all platforms individually. So in this Flutter, iOS, Android, Web, Windows, Mac OS, Linux, and even embedded systems. So IoT and products are very fast moving and very developing at present stage in the Web3 also. So it all these individual seven platforms can be done in a single code base with a slight changes in the coding part. So how Flutter is cross-platform? A Flutter code can run on desktop, mobile, and web platforms. So you don't need to hire developers for each platform. You need to write the code only once in Flutter, and you can rest assured that the app will work across the other platforms. So Flutter is cheap. Flutter is fast. Adding features to your app is fast because you only have to make code updates once in Flutter, and that's all. Since Flutter has high expressiveness, it requires less code than that of native language. Flutter code compiles to ARM or Intel machine code as well as JavaScript for fast performance on any device. So JavaScript is obviously, people know that it is used for web application. So when we develop an application for a web, so it requires to compile it in as JavaScript so that it is compatible for various websites and various individual servers. So what Flutter does is it converts the Dart programming language Flutter code into an JavaScript to provide the output as a web data. So it has high performance and productivity. In Flutter, it is achieved by several techniques. Unlike many other popular mobile platforms, Flutter doesn't use JavaScript for mobiles. whereas many other platforms use JavaScript for mobiles to make it flexible for various different applications. Dart is the programming language. It compiles to binary code, and that's why it runs with the native performance of Objective-C, Swift, Java, or Kotlin. So the binary code, ones and zeros, it obviously is simpler to computer, but it's difficult for humans to understand. So the coding part of the Flutter is simple, but it converts into a binary text, binary form, and then further it is changed into a native performance function. So Flutter doesn't use native UI components. For people who are not able to identify what is native, native is the platform or the language that is used for basically for developing the Kotlin process native Android applications through Kotlin or Java. So Flutter doesn't use native UI components. That may sound awkward at first. However, because components are implemented in Flutter itself, there is no communication layer between the view and your code. So there isn't any intermediate median between the code that the developer does and as well as the view or the output that happens. Due to this, the games hit the best speed for their graphics out of the smartphone while using Flutter. So buttons, text, media elements, backgrounds are all drawn by Flutter's graphic engine as an aside. It should be mentioned that bundle of the Flutter Hello World application is quite small. In iOS it is 2.5 MB and Android 4 MB. So it is quite smaller. Flutter uses a declarative approach inspired by the React Web framework to build its UI based on widgets named components in the world of web, but widgets are used in the world of Flutter. So to get more out of the widgets, they are rendered only when necessary, usually when their state has been changed, just like virtual DOM does for us. Widgets like buttons, whenever clicked, it gives a ripple effect and it changes into another navigation center. So that happens with the help of Flutter's declarative approach. It changes after specific conditions and rules. In addition to all, the framework has integrated hot reload, so typically for the web but still missing for native platforms. This allows the Flutter framework to automatically rebuild the widget tree, allowing you to quickly view the effects on your changes. So Flutter is flexible. It is able to control every pixel to create customized adaptive designs that look and feel great on any screen. So the Flutter is flexible since it can be used for various different screens. Like an iOS 6 can be, Apple iPhone 6 can be smaller, whereas an Apple iPhone 14 is comparatively larger to iPhone 6. So it can be customized basically with the help of the Flutter programming language. So there is no compromise for the design that is being provided by the Flutter application. So in this application, there is a Wikipedia like thing which has moon's data and planets data. So this is so clear that it doesn't has to implement any wrong data loss or the size loss or anything like that. So Flutter is open. It contains of a huge community of Google developers. It is since it's developed by Google, they have created a vast community among them. There are various people who share their data and knowledges through Flutter in GitHub, in their community platforms, etc. So Flutter can be portable. So on iOS. Same way, there are various few individual components that needs to be added in widgets such that the mobile can be changed into desktop or embedded system or web. So Flutter can be built anywhere. Flutter is supported across tools, platforms. So people who are developer already uses Android Studio, Visual Studio, and various. It happens because of the ability of the plugins that are present in the IDEs for Flutter with the help of the community people of the Flutter group. Over 400,000 to 200,000 Flutter apps have been used and created and developed by startups to enterprises like Google, Dream11, eBay, BMW. Such big companies use Flutter so that they are introduced to various applications and faster growth of their applications intensity. So obviously Google introduced Flutter, but still the Google apps are must know. We have to speak about Google apps such that we can showcase their Google's work in Flutter. So Google AdMob, Google One, Stadia, Google Ads, Nest Hub, Google Analytics, Family Link, local services, even GPay. Everything is based upon Flutter. They are using Flutter. Flutter is not a small language. It is a framework that is widely used across whole country, whole. We could see the contents or anything in the material app. So in this, the returning of material app is what makes the application to be visible throughout the applications. So this is the structure of a Flutter app. So a Flutter app is it is like walls inside a walls inside a wall inside a wall. Like the material app is the outer function, the main thing that holds the whole application. So the material app consists of everything that is like the texture, the paintings, the widgets, the individual components inside the application in such a way that it is organized in a perfect manner and it is flexible in individual applications. Like it should be flexible for iOS. When it is changed into an Android application, it should be completely adaptive to Android application. Since various different Android applications are there, it should be adaptable to the size and structure of the Android application, Android mobiles. So that's the material app. The material app is the important aspect of a Flutter application. Then comes the scaffold. Scaffolds are the structural inside the material app, which is containing the necessary components of the already presiding data of the mobile app and the mobile operating system, and the center and text. It's obvious to everyone that the center means it's organizing and allocating the position for the application. The text is obviously what the content we have to showcase. So what is Dart? Dart is a coding language used with Flutter framework. Dart is client optimized language for fast apps on any platform. So Dart language is used to develop application in Flutter. Learning Dart isn't completely hard. If a developer has experience in Java or JavaScript, you will quickly get it. So there is a survey kind of thing done by native Android app developer who uses Java to differentiate the aspects that let Flutter be faster and effective among native app development. An application, this surveys like the developer developed an application using Java, a native application. So the number of files was like 179 files and the lines of code were 12,000 and 100 and something. So what this is that in this it is so huge, the data consumption, the storage consumption, the development time, it is so hasty and it is so huge. So after using Dart and Flutter as a framework in the application, the same application with the same functionality, the number of files was reduced drastically to 31. So where is 179 and using Dart it is only 31 and the lines of code were 1735 only. So it is like reducing 10,000 lines of code, which reduces obviously the work pressure of the developer. So major components of Flutter framework architecture are Dart platform, Flutter engine, foundation library, design specific widgets, Flutter development tools. The Flutter development tools Dart naturally comes with a set of utilities for optimizing and debugging Dart code. This suite of tools is accessible from the browser or IDE you are using. While coding Flutter using dev tools will shorten your coding time and give you deep insights into an application. Flutter dev tools include indispensable tooling like an inspector, a debugger, a performance monitor, and a network monitor, and logger, and many more. So, what does a debugger do? Obviously, it checks individual lines of the program and reduces the testing time of the application. The performance monitor checks the performance of the running of application, which should be able to reduce the response duration and also be performance perfect. So, what is Dart? Dart is a programming language designed for client development. So, it is for client development. Dart is obviously for mobile apps, web application. It is developed by Google and can also be used to build server and desktop applications. So, developing an application for both server, desktop, as well as mobile, it is kind of hectic, like in web or any other individual product. But using Dart and Flutter, it is quite simple, and Dart is completely object oriented and class based, like C style syntax. So, hot reloading. It is an important aspect of Flutter and Dart. So, Dart is a modern programming language that comes with an ahead of time AOT and just in time compiler. So, the just in time compiler. So, the just in time compiler gives the feel that Dart is rather interpreted in runtime. In other words, it makes it possible for changes to Dart files to reflect immediately. So, for developing in another language, it requires restarting of the whole program. But Dart, it provided with hot reload. That's something very much important and very much interesting in the Dart. So what it does is, it doesn't small componential changes are reflected immediately after a single week, and it requires so much less time. Whereas using hot restart or normal application, what that does is that it comes to a platform in which the app's code is hosted. So whenever the Flutter code is being written or debugged, it is moved into a Dart virtual machine. So the app's code is hosted in that. The way that when you launch the Flutter run command, pressing R in the function, the terminal ships in the changes in Dart files without recompiling the whole app. This instantaneous yet cross-platform change reflecting feature of Flutter is called hard reloading. So benefits of Dart. Benefits of Dart is something like it has optimized UI. It provides the user interface in an optimized way such that the simple programming language gives a specialized way of interface for individual users with their perspective and developers to their capability. Productive development. So it changes iteratively using hot reload to see the result instantaneously in your running app. It is kind of mind blowing, you know. People like developers and must handle the curiosity within that. It is very much interesting to know that in like small changes can be visible immediately in a mobile application development. So it is also fast on all platforms. It is compared with ARM architecture and for mobile, desktop and backend, or compared to JavaScript for the web. So this is in simple Dart programming. You could see the main function is like C, the print function is like C. So it is simple. The Dart language is completely related to C and Java. So it is going to be quite simple when we start in a hands-on session. So there are community pages that are led by the Flutter team to showcase their functionalities. So this is the Flutter's developers own page. So you could see how unique their website is. So they have used Flutter for this development also. So it is multi-platform. It reaches users on every screen. So we could also see the target platforms eventually when we are working with it. So it also improves the workflow of the Flutter developers. The main important aspect of Flutter is that it is completely stable and reliable, so that it is trusted by many developers worldwide. So the ecosystem of Flutter development is completely community based, and it has global developers who share their knowledge completely into every individual's capability. So in this we can see the Flutter documentations. And the updates of Flutters are wondered. The Flutter, so we will see about installing Flutter in a Windows OS. Okay, so the Flutter installation